Hi there, my name is Wade Murray. Welcome to the Great Green North Podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything about lawns with a Canadian twist. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, everybody. So welcome to the Great Green North Podcast with special guest Ryan DeMay coming in here.
Wow, special, huh?
Special, yeah.
That's a illustrious introduction. I appreciate that. But hey, I just want to talk some turf. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you, and especially north of the border, some different, some differences and some similarities and all that kind of stuff. So I enjoy thinking about turf and lawns and stuff like that outside my comfort zone. That's what helps me get better anyway. At least it's kind of weird in a way, but it also is super helpful. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and that is kind of one of the big things up here too, is that we don't have any chems at all, pretty much. It's pretty, I mean, when you get more in the western provinces up in Canada, you can get a little more near more of the agriculture centers. You might be able to go to a farm supply store and pick up some stuff. But other than that, we're pretty much dry up here. So a lot of our lawn stuff comes from more about better cultural practices and taking care of stuff before it becomes an issue than treating it after, right? Having a thick stand of turf grass is always the best weed control in the end, right?
No, absolutely. I think, and that's the part that, I'm anxious to talk about. I've, seen and learned a lot, because of here, less on the chemical restriction side, but, budget restrictions at some of the places that I used to work, and, lots of things to take care of, and you can't really do as much as you want to chemically and things like that. And then, talk a little bit about, this concept that I wouldn't say that we've developed it, but we've enhanced it and tried to bring it, greater notoriety. We talk a lot about integrated pest management, and I think that's good. I think it's something that's maybe a little less understood in terms of the general public and what that really means, but more so to the fact we call it integrated turf health management, right? So there's a bunch of other things in inputs, right, that allow for us to manage turf to be healthy, right, outside of just managing pests, right? So it's trying to take a holistic approach. So excited to dive in and talk about that and hear about some of the things that you faced and some of the things that your listeners have faced. And we won't solve all the world's problems tonight, but we'll try and see what we can do.
All right. So first, I just didn't know if Ryan, you just wanted to take a minute to introduce yourself to maybe anybody who doesn't know who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, no, I appreciate again, the opportunity, and I'm a lowly old grass grower from Ohio in the United States, and currently live in the central part of the state in Columbus, which is the state capital. I've lived here for about 20 years, about half my life almost now. And, previous to what I do now, which I'll get into in a second, I was in the golf course business for a long time, for about 16 years. So when I was real young, kind of worked my way up through the ranks and went to school for turf grass management at Ohio State University, and got a couple of degrees from there in turf grass management, turf grass science. And then fortunately, kept ascending in my career in golf. And then after I'd reached kind of the mountaintop and been a golf course superintendent, I decided, well, it's time to get out of this. The hours are crazy, and it doesn't really befit a young lad with a newborn baby and a wife at home and all that kind of stuff. So I switched to sports turf, and I worked for a very large town or city or municipality here in Ohio, in central Ohio, and ran all their sports fields, their outdoor fields. So over 130 fields in total, and 40 people, huge operation, and did that for 8 years. And then decided, during that end of that run, I was kind of running something on the side there where I was doing consulting. I was, taking the best parts of my previous jobs in turf, right, and trying to help people that had turf already, growing better turf, and then people that wanted to change or do a renovation or a big project or something like that, help guide them through that process. And fortunately enough, got to the fork in the road, where it was, hey, you either need to, quit your job and go do this full time and give it a shot, or, stay put where you're at and your, cushy government job. And I decided to take the leap. So that was nearly 2 years ago that I finally did that, and it's been great ever since. We've got some great clients all the way from professional sports teams all the way down to high schools and park agencies, park systems, things like that, and anything in between. So we deal a lot with natural grass turf, some a little bit with synthetic turf as well. Our mindset is that no matter what the field's made of, that the kids or the athletes, adults, whoever's playing on it, deserve to have a safe field. And all those things take work and time and science, right, to understand how to do it the right way. So that's what we're in the business of. So it's me and a couple other folks right now. We never intend to really be a massive company per se, but it's just work with good people and do it our way and do it the right way, and good things will happen. And that to me is worth way more than being a giant company and having gobs and gobs of money and problems, right? I think there was a song written about that, right? More money, more problems. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, that's a little bit about me and who I am. So I know about Great Green North Lawn Care, and follow the channel. Try to see, again, from a different lens, a different perspective. I think it's really important that Americans understand that things are different up there, right? That not having access to some of these chemicals sort of ties one hand behind your back in that case, right? In the area that you live. But at the same time, I don't want your Canadian listeners to think, wow, they've got it easy, all they got to do is spray and it just takes care of it. I mean, it's unfortunately, I wish it was that easy in some cases, but it's not. And there's the whole perception thing, and so we could talk all night about that piece. But yeah, like I said, I'm interested to hear what kind of issues you're facing up there, and dive right in and see what's going on.
Yeah, even some other stuff, like even just growing season up here can be really, really short depending on where you're located. I mean, I know some of the, like I know Connor, up in Utah there, his season's pretty short. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much like second, third week of May till about, Canadian Thanksgiving, which is second week of October, and that's pretty much it for us. So I mean, we've had snow on the ground since November 1st. So, and probably
Yeah.
stick around for now.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably gonna be a long time before you see the grass again, but
Yeah.
I can empathize a little bit. So we have some fields up here in the central part of the state. It gets pretty warm here in the summertime. We're in the very northern edges of the transition zone, which allows us, to maybe get into some warm season grasses. So we have converted some of these, soccer fields and whatnot over into Bermuda grass. So your season for growing cool season is about the same season I have for growing warm season here in Ohio, and it works really, really well. Like it does go dormant, end of October-ish, and it doesn't really green up until the middle of May. But I understand, that sprint, that sense of urgency that you have. Okay, hey, like, is it going to get going? Is it going to get going? And then finally it does, right? And then it's like the greatest thing in the world. It looks awesome, and then 13 weeks later, it's all over. And you just have to relish in the memories for the next 7 months until it comes back around again. But it's fun. It's fun. I can empathize fully with that.
That's why we're sitting in my basement right now talking about grass while there's snow outside.
Hey, you got to have something to pass the time. And
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sadly enough, like as we were talking here just before we pressed record, was we're no snow on the ground. It's been pretty moderate here temperature wise, so we're still grinding and working on projects and get ready for next year and everything. And it's just like yeah, and maybe it does need to get really cold and really snowy down here too, and just put a stop to all this stuff. But yeah, so
sometimes it is nice to just let go, for like a month and just pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
you go nuts after about 3-4 days. Nothing else to do.
It is, and like that's my least favorite time of the year is like the end of February and early March, when there's just like you get a couple of nice days and it teases you, and you can't really get any of that traction to like start getting stuff done or whatever. But so I'm curious on your part is what if you had to describe it or whatever, what you faced on your lawn, or in the sense of your viewers, and you kind of take it wherever you want to go, but what is sort of the main issue up there that you see in lawns, both in your business and your personal setting? Like what are the common issues with, again, having some of the restrictions in place and all that kind of stuff? Because I want to understand from a primary source like yourself, what you're dealing with. I have my own perceptions of what I see, but I want to hear it.
So, what I would mainly say, I mean, we have like, standard Great Lakes weather where we get, we have humid summers. And then we also, we can get up into that like 40-degree Celsius range in the
Okay.
middle of July, which can be really stressful on the turf. Like normally around July 4th weekend, that's about, the worst it gets for us. And then
Mm-hmm.
it starts to cool off around beginning of August.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, maybe your 2 months in the spring where everything's looking fine and dandy, other than the giant seed heads that can come poking up in end of May sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you maybe have those 2 months, late August or a month, really September, and then that's pretty much it for the year. But then the other major thing here is, there's. I know when I worked on the golf course, we had a lot of snow mold because of not being able to treat for snow mold up here, and
Mm-hmm.
just some of the blowing snow we can get sometimes. And we the area I'm in, we get a lot of ice and kind of ice and
Uh
snow and back and forth, and a lot of that kind of mixing, and that never makes a good mix for anything down here.
no. No, I
You
think,
may get slushy roads instead of snowy roads.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then that's what under that snowpack, that stuff freezes, and that's a real thing. I mean, for from a snow mold perspective, I don't get too worked up about that, but the ice, right, that can be very problematic. Grass needs, even when it's dormant, right, even when it's the wintertime, it still needs to breathe, right, it still needs oxygen. So in that absence of oxygen underneath that ice, you'll get what's called anoxia, right, which is a lack of oxygen. So and certain grasses are a little bit better at tolerating that, right? Poa though, which if you have that in your lawn, people consider it a weed. And part of the reason is under stress, it's a very poor performing plant. Even in the wintertime, right? You always think about that stuff kind of puking out and going dormant in the middle of summer, like when you said, like when it's 37 to 40 C and just
Yeah.
crazy hot. It's also in the wintertime too when that stuff gets under ice. So having good desirable grass in there, that's a huge component of surviving winter and coming out of it in the best possible sense. In not, if you do have some some snow mold to grow out of or whatever, that's hugely important. But yeah, it's interesting that you guys are on that, like, you always see the weather maps that have like snow to the north and rain to the south. You're just like us, it sounds like, where
Yeah.
we're always in the ice zone. They're always in the
Yeah.
mix
Yeah.
where the weatherman is just like throwing his hands up like, it could be a little bit of everything, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's no fun. That's no fun.
No, no. Honestly, too, I would probably say the biggest thing up here is like kind of it's almost like a morality issue. Like, I mean, the when the chemical bans came in the early 2000s, everybody just kind of like gave up. And then you have, you're surrounded by like dandelion farms or just like
Mm-hmm.
absolute weed pits, like all your neighbors around you. And I mean, my lawn's 22,000 square feet, so it's a decent chunk of grass in the back.
Yeah.
But I mean, when those seeds are blown in from like all the neighbors, they do the wait till it gets like, a foot and a half tall and then just hack it down to, 3/4 inch, and then it'll grow back later eventually. But it's almost just like, everybody up here is kind of giving up. And that's mainly what I'm trying to help, teach people up here is that like, you don't have to have chemicals. You don't have to water the crap out of your lawn in the summertime. And you can still have a pretty decent stand of turf grass throughout the year just by doing some basic maintenance, proper cutting height and, fertilizing, a couple times a year. That's all you need to do just to have like a decent stand of turf grass.
Huh. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that people all over the world, and mainly in North America, and I'll single out Canada too, eh, myself included, right? It's only as difficult as you want to make it, right? So, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people make it too complicated, too complex, and or do a poor job of setting expectations. I do a podcast with Ryan Knorr, and we talk often about this, both on and offline, about not necessarily like making plans of, hey, what we're going to do, but before we even get to that point, hey, what are the expectations, right? And I think, in Canada and, in Ontario especially, it's a situation where you're going to have that. You're going to have people that the bottom end of the barrel, right? The lowest of the low is going to look way worse than what you think it should, probably, at least from a perception standpoint, and you have to be okay with that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have nice stuff. It just means that you're going to have to work extra hard, like you said. If you have your half acre, your 22,000 square feet, and you're surrounded by people that don't care, yeah, the degree of difficulty is going to get turned up, and you may have to manage your expectations accordingly. So, but sitting there and beating yourself up over it, and I'll say that from a professional perspective, and I'm guilty of it too. I mean, early on in my career, I was terrible about setting expectations for myself, setting expectations for those that worked with me, and setting expectations for the turf that we worked on, right? And when something didn't go the way that we had planned, I'd get upset, I'd get pissed, whatever, and it just wasn't worth the energy. So that's something I've worked a lot on, and I try to tell people that all the time. Whether it's our clients who are generally lay people, they're not turf people. Working with them on how to do that, and it's tough, of saying, well, hey, how do you want your turf to look? Well, I want it to look nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell me something else. Well, I want it to look green. All right, that's a little better. We're getting somewhere, but to say that, hey, listen, I just want it to survive the summer and, have a reasonable stand of grass that we can thicken up, going into fall, use that good weather in the back half of the year so that coming into the next year, I've got thick turf grass that's going to resist, crabgrass from starting to germinate, here into, say mid-May, it starts germinating in June. I want to be able to choke that out. And the only way I'm going to do that is survive summer, get to fall, and then have a good chance of growing some grass back so that next spring's not starting off on the wrong foot. Now we can work with something, right? Those are good and precise expectations, but nice and green, like you're setting yourself up for, if it's not green or if it's not nice, it's an automatic failure, right? So
Yeah.
Anyway, I drug that answer out. I apologize, but I
No,
think
no,
that's a
no.
really important part of the non-scientific part. The part between your ears about taking care of grass. That's really, really important.
Well, I think you talked about too about like, pick the 4 month slot of the year where you want
Yeah,
your lawn to be green.
yeah,
And I'll tell you what grass you can plant to give you that, 4 months of green grass. And I mean it's true. Like when it's 37 with like a 40% humidex, your grass is not going to be, pristine. And it's just not. It's not going to happen. It's not.
no, and I think that's where, again, up there, in Canada and Ontario proper, especially, where there's, some really, really, really restrictive bans. It's funny, we were reading on, again, I'm on several podcasts, and it's not to like promote, it's just to say, like, we were talking about Manitoba, where they just kind of relaxed some of the bans specifically for athletic fields, parks, no schools, but also some lawn care stuff too, because they were having such a tough time with how things looked, and how,
Oh, it's embarrassing. Our local parks here, they look like atrocious. Even our local like soccer fields, they're like dirt and weed pits. That's pretty much all they are, just dandelions.
well, and I think that's something too that I don't know how much effort's been put up there, and I'm sure that there are good examples and good sort of case studies, if you will, in Canada. And I'd have to personally do more research to find out who those folks are, where they are, and what they're doing. But a good corollary here down in the States is Connecticut. So the state of Connecticut, 10 years ago now, 2012, they banned the use of all registered pesticides on the grounds of schools that are anything between kindergarten and eighth grade, right? So, if you have a high school, no problem. If you're, down here, typically kids will go, K through, 5 or 6, and then, 6, 7, 8, something like that, and a different building, or all in the same building, something like that. So they left the high schools off because obviously they have, sports fields, and they've got multiple teams playing on those. They kind of gave them a little bit of a break there. But with these other schools, no pesticides allowed whatsoever. So fortunately there, the University of Connecticut, which has a pretty strong turf program, headed up by a couple of guys. One guy is Dr. Jason Henderson. The other guy is Dr. John Inguagiato. So Jason is a physiologist, right, by trade, and John is a turf pathologist. So he looks at plant diseases and things like that. And they investigated, okay, well, hey, if this is a ban, we're gonna have a lot of people affected by this. How can we manage, right? What are some things that we can do culturally and everything like that? So they've spent the last 10 years really diving in and investigating this. And there's some, pretty interesting stuff that's come out of their work in terms of what can and can't be done. And specifically to like what you're saying about parks. It's sad that that's like that because let's be honest. Let me ask you this way: did your taxes go down when they instituted the bans?
No.
Or what? So where did that money go? They were taking
Yeah.
care of it. They were doing all this stuff, and now, well, that's the thing is that I'm not here to debate tax policy, but I will say that you give me a certain product for a certain price, right? And that's essentially what a tax payment is. You change that, right? You lower my expectations, whether it's right or wrong, and now I'm still paying the same price, and that ain't cool. So I think that was sort of the mindset that the folks in Connecticut have still and have had, for the last 10 years is how do we still deliver? How do we make these fields safe first? And how do we make these areas, that are outside of, playing fields, for example, how do we still make them beautiful? And there's some really, really good examples. And a lot of it just comes down to like what we talked about at the top of the show, good cultural practices, a ton of overseeding, right, to introduce and keep desirable species. So basically, the name of the game is, grow it faster than they can destroy it. That's it.
Yeah.
And
That's what we did at the golf course. We just hit it nonstop pretty much all year.
yep,
And that
yep,
was all we could do.
yeah, and I think there it's there is a point too, and that's one of the things they really looked at was renovations and what those look like. So they've employed a lot of techniques where obviously their pressure for crabgrass and summer annuals is higher than probably what you guys have there in the greater Toronto area, but they've taken a look, and that's really one of the limiting factors is there's nothing good from an organic or natural perspective to use in terms of control, post-emergent control on summer annuals and crabgrass in particular. You can use corn gluten meal as as a pre-emergent and things like that, but if you get breakthrough, there ain't a whole lot you can do. So what they've started doing is more in line with removing all that grass. So there are machines that will take out just the vegetation on top, not like till everything up, but just kind of skim off the vegetation. So you start with a clean slate, you rip all those shallow tap rooted weeds out. If you've got poa annua, it's a real shallow rooted plant, but your desirable stuff, so if you have tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, something like that, it will regenerate a little bit, and then also you go ahead back in there and seed it. And they found that to be pretty good tactics. So about every 3 years is what they found that they're doing this. And some places, if they have the budget, are just saying, screw it, we're going to sod. And
yeah,
especially on sports fields, it's a pretty expensive proposition. Here in American dollars, I mean, that's in that neck of the woods, somewhere in the neighborhood of 150,000 US dollars every pop. So yeah, that's big time money. But in a lawn situation, I think there's a lot of the things that can be sort of scaled down to a lawn setting and used that these folks have found. And I think it'd be interesting to watch somebody employ some of these tactics. And again, this is another thing that they found in Connecticut is that the research gave them a starting point, but everybody has sort of found their own way, right, based on the climate in their property, the existing grasses and soils and things like that they have. So a lot of cool stuff, and I think it's a good talking point, at least for the folks that listen to you and are in that situation there in Canada.
yeah. Another kind of a little off-topic question here, though. How many? I know you've probably laid a ton of sod in your entire lifetime. Is there a how many rolls of sod have you fit on a wheelbarrow at one time? because I think my max is 15. I think is what I've done
If
so
you got
far.
15 rolls of sod on a wheelbarrow, is pretty
You got
pretty
to go. You got to
gnarly.
go up the handles too and over the top and
Then you
to
gotta you
get you
gotta
around the
you gotta unroll them and lay them across your arm, like
yeah
belts of machine gun ammunition or something like that, and then carry it
yeah.
up there. That's always good. I don't know that I've ever gotten 15. I don't think I can do that. We're usually going by the truckload, so
Yeah.
our sod comes in big rolls that are about a little over a meter wide, and usually about 30 or so 35 meters long, right? And we roll those out, and you can get a field done or a big area pretty quickly. So yeah, the 15 rolls though,
Yeah.
that's impressive. I think that should be they used to have like I don't know if they had it on television there, but they used to have the Steel Timber Sports series, on like ESPN and stuff, where they were like,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
fast you could chop down a tree. We need to do like the lawn care Olympics or something
Lawn
like
care
that.
Olympics. Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's a
How many
market
rolls
for
of
it.
sod can you carry? Yeah.
Yeah. So, if somebody from Steel or some other landscape companies out there listening, Toro, looking at you,
Oh
we need to
yeah.
do this. Let's do this on
Yeah.
YouTube. And we got Wade. My money's on Wade in the sod wheelbarrow
And
challenge
the
for
sod
sure.
wheelbarrow challenge. I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe you get Connor in there. He might go nuts. You never know
Connor,
with him.
I would put Connor more, in the non-endurance portions. I'd put him in the speed type
Oh
trials,
yeah,
right?
probably.
So
Yeah.
like
The sprinting
that's
and
the sprinting, and like who can walk real mo at like 9 miles an hour with a brisk jog or something like that. I
yeah,
think
a little
he'd
bit
be
of
into stuff
skip
like
every
that.
once in a while. Yeah.
He'd probably tap his toes together when he crosses the finish line.
Yeah.
The thing about Connor that's interesting is that folks sometimes ask me, and I know they've asked others, right? Like, so wait, like, is he the same person off camera? And I'm like, he is exactly the same. Like, there is nothing different about that dude when he is talking to you. And I don't talk to him often, but randomly he'll call or shoot me a text, and it's a super detailed, very precise question, and he needs the answer now. Like, and it's like like a nagging wife or girlfriend. Like, if you don't respond to him in
Yeah.
like 3 minutes, he's like, are you ignoring me? Is there something wrong? What's wrong? How come you're not talking to me? And it's like, Connor, dude, chill. Just give me a minute. So anyway, but that's Connor in a nutshell. But
I
no,
was gonna
it's
say I don't think I would have to ask if he was like that off camera. I think I kind of gathered that from what I saw that was
it's
what it
not
was
a
like.
yeah, people ask that question, and I'm like, it is not an act. It
Yeah.
is 100% genuine. So, but no, that's cool. So, yeah, I'm anxious
So
to
a
hear.
couple
So 20, go ahead, throw it out there.
so like in the spring this year for example, we had like a very and this was another I think I had asked this when you and Ryan were doing the live turf cast was about like fertilizer in spring versus fall or nitrogen in spring versus fall.
Sure.
Some of our springs can be very cold and they can drag on for a while. Like I mean, this year we didn't really have our first like 80-degree day or Fahrenheit till like I don't know, like middle of June. So we had
Yeah.
a very cold and dragging, and sometimes the lawn just kind of won't really get. It wants to do that spring flush, but every time you keep getting these cold snaps, it keeps snapping back, right? And it keeps kind of dying back down, and you're not really getting a response out of it that you want. So what would you suggest like versus nitrogen? I know a lot of people don't want to push a lot of nitrogen in the spring because of the top growth, right? And it kind of but on nitrogen in the fall produces better root growth. I don't know what would your suggestion be for that?
Yeah.
Because this
So
year
I
I
mean,
think I put about like 4 pounds down in the fall before the snow flew. So
okay, 4 pounds of fertilizer or four
between
pounds of N.
4 pounds of N between the end of August and the end of November.
Wow. Hammering it. Okay. So, spring in cooler temperatures like that. So, I think I was telling you that before, we pressed record, but I grew up in the northern part of Ohio, which is, from you is, a hop, skip, and a jump. It's probably about 4.5 hour drive, something like that. So, pretty familiar with that Great Lakes type climate, which is, vastly different than what I've become accustomed to here. Um, and so it's the same thing, right? That you have those springs as you described, where it just never really gets going until late May and even into June sometimes. So I think the important thing there is just what you said, how you sort of put it to bed in the fall, right? So you're going to get a ton of carryover, here in this area in the Midwest. I'd expect if you had that much end down that you wouldn't need to really apply anything, from a visual quality standpoint, a color standpoint, until sometime into late May, even, right? So anything that you do prior to that, I don't know that you're going to see a tremendous benefit from. The grass at that point has plenty of carbohydrates in the roots, and it's using that up as you get going. I think the thing that you need to be wary of in that case is any added nitrogen at that time, in particular, is going to force the grass to grow quicker, right? And when it grows quicker, it's going to deplete those carbohydrate reserves in the roots faster. And when we lose that root mass and that root depth, that's when we can set ourselves up for problems in the summertime, right? Because we're in the business and cool season territory of growing roots starting in the fall, really going through spring and trying to preserve those, depending on if it's a cold, or a hot spring, or something that's more normal. And then once we get to summer, we're living off of what we've put in the bank essentially with our roots, right? Because you will have dieback of roots. You're going to have root decline in the summertime for a couple of different reasons. One, the grass is using more energy than it can produce because temperatures are hotter than it can physiologically produce its own food, right? And then also same thing, it's under stress, right? So on those days where it's in the mid to upper 30s, in Celsius, your soil temperatures are easily in the low 30s probably, right?
Yeah,
And
somewhere around there.
that's not a environment that's conducive for root growth, right? So you're going to see more dieback in those situations too. So to answer the question, I mean, I think how you proceed through the fall, and if so, let's say that let's take two different scenarios here. Someone such as yourself that did a good job getting plenty of nitrogen out there through the fall, and I would say that you can stand pat and probably not do anything until the latter part of May, even into June, right? When things start warming up and your grass really starts kicking into high gear, 2-3 weeks after that flush of growth that you'll see, right? We always get that spring flush where it just it's kind of like sitting there and you don't know if it's going to really take off, and then
Yeah.
one week later it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm mowing this stuff like every other day and I can't keep up.
Yeah.
That passes, give it about 2-3 weeks, something like that, as long as weather's normal, and then you're going to be in that slot to go ahead and make your first fertilizer application. Now let's say that you didn't put anything down this past fall. So let's say that you ceased all applications in August, for example. So you kind of really didn't do much in September, October. Then there's a case to go out there with some early spring in. And the other nice thing too, based on your climate for the most part, is that we see sort of a rapid ascent in how much top growth we're getting, and then it sort of levels off. And yeah, you're going to have some dips here and there based on summer heat and things like that. But if it's a pretty moderate year, that growth curve, if you will kind of plateau and stay the same most of the summer. And I think in those cases, that's where, if you haven't done those fall applications, just go ahead and put some out coming into, say, May, and then again in June, and then just kind of see what the weather does. As you said, July 4th time, that could be a period of extreme heat. So maybe back off, play a little bit of defense, and then again just get ready to resume your application sometime in August, and then carry those through into the next fall and set yourself up so that you're not having to kind of play catch up in the spring again. I think those are the two scenarios that I hear about often, is either I did or I didn't in fall, and then what do I do now? So that would be sort of the two sides of the coin there.
Yeah, and then just to follow up on that micros, if people are asking about, liquid, if they're going to put down some micros, would you do that like still in the spring, even though if you put that much N in the fall?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, from a a color response, all that kind of stuff without growth. Obviously, that's probably the number one benefit right there. Number two, as you have increased the amount of nitrogen that's in the plant, right, especially through fall, the consumption of those micronutrients goes up as well. It's directly proportional, right? So the more N in, all those other nutrients get used that much faster, right? So it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and supplement with that, with those micros, going into springtime. No issues there whatsoever.
All right, sweet. And then I guess moving on to the big thing that everybody asks, unless you have anything else you want to say on that one before we move on.
No, you're good.
No. So obviously, as soon as summer comes, everybody, why is my lawn dying? Why is my lawn turning brown? Blah, 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 blah. All those emails come flying in. It's like 1 week in the year, and 100 emails just sitting in my inbox, all same pictures, same story. I'm watering, 10 minutes every day, and it's not working. I don't know why, and all that stuff. And I mean, specifically where I am, there's a lot of clay around me, up in like Milton and all around that area. But where I am, my soil is pure sand. Like
Okay.
we drilled post holes for my deck, and we didn't hit a single rock. It's like pure. It's not beach sand. It's like silica sand. It's like about 2 feet
Okay.
of topsoil, and then just pure sand after that. So
Mm.
I'm not holding a lot of moisture in
Mm-hmm.
my area. But
Mm-hmm.
what would your like tips be for going into summer, like things maybe to look at in the spring before you hit that summer? Um I know I got a little bit into wetting agents at the end of the year this
Yeah.
year, just
Yeah.
trying them out. I was able to find one
Mm-hmm.
that was available up here. I
Mm-hmm.
know some people talk about humic. I don't really know if that in my experience, I haven't really found a super big difference between humic and no humic.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah. So I think the wetting agents are really going to be, the equalizer there, and that's in that sense, right? You got a couple of things to think about. Number one is, yeah, if you're not holding water, right? So the thing I always look about in summertime is, let's talk about irrigated lawns and let's talk about non-irrigated lawns, because the way that you're going to treat, react, and set expectations for both of those scenarios are vastly different, right? So on an irrigated
Yeah,
lawn,
you're either going one way or the other. You're not switching in between the two of them.
right, and you're not running the same. I always recommend not running the same program on those. If you're a lawn care company, I think you can, if you, but you're sort of watering it down, pun fully intended, for both of those parties, right? Where I think obviously when you're irrigating, you're going to continue to be growing. You're going to continue to consume nutrients at a faster rate, out of the soil than you would if you were unirrigated, right? Because the plant dries down. We know that, for instance, on nitrogen, for example, that better than 90% of the nitrogen that goes through the plant is actually taken up by a process called mass flow. Mass flow is where the root needs water, right? And it's a potential equation, right? So we've got lower potential in the root, higher potential in the soil because the soil is wet. Water goes into the plant, from the soil. And with that water, in that water are nitrates, right? Or ammonium, right?
Yeah.
That enter the plant and become converted and used for energy and physiological processes. So when things dry out, right, and we don't have water in the soil, we go through extended period without rainfall or something like that. That nitrogen, depending on the form that it's in and how it's how it's been applied, slow release versus quick release, all those types of things, organic matter percentages, all that. Those processes all slow down considerably in those situations. Whereas if you've got irrigated, everything's fine, everything's working as it should. So it's a little bit more predictable in that sense of how long a particular application may or may not last, right? We see a lot of times with slow release products, in the summertime on unirrigated, you'll go through that dry stretch and it'll look maybe anywhere from awful to okay, and
Yeah.
then you get a rainfall and it's like, oh my gosh, like look how amazing this looks, and then
Yeah.
you've waited, yeah, it's been like 9 days, but you're applying all to all those 100 emails and be like, look, see.
Yeah.
And so in those cases about the wetting agents, I think there's a use case for those, particularly in in unirrigated turf, right? For that very reason that you're going to extend the period of how long there's viable moisture in that soil, right? That the plant's going to use and continue to hold color. So that's number one. Number two, I think genetics and species selection takes a big role here too. So, using earth type Paul fescues in unirrigated spaces, highly recommend that. Fine fescues too, if there's not a ton of traffic. We know that these grasses are much more resistant and tolerant of drought. So that's something too that I'd be really thinking about is, okay, if I'm unirrigated and this looks like crap every year, maybe I need to look at what type of grass I have in here. And the newer grasses specifically are being bred to operate and grow well even under low input and specifically low water input conditions. So something else to consider there. The last part, with the wetting agent thing on the irrigated side, and we do see this, is like no irrigation system's foolproof, right? You
Oh
look
yeah.
out and there's like, look at that it's a little wet over there, it's still dry over here. The one thing I'll say in irrigated turf, and you would think, well, why would I need to use a wetting agent on irrigated turf? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, you still have, dry down, right? So, if you turn that irrigation system on at, 5, 6 in the morning, you let it run until, 8, 9 in the morning, shut it off, right? How uniform is all that moisture in there? And when it goes to start drying down, and let's say you skip a day, right? You say, okay, hey, I'm gonna let that water soak in, do its thing. We'll come back a day or two from then and go back at it, right? What that wetting agent allows you to do is even out that dry down so that the areas that maybe don't have the best coverage hold on a little bit longer. And depending on the type of wetting agent you get, just to broadly classify wetting agents, there are wetting agents that generally, and they're all marketed a little bit differently, and they maybe overmarket a little bit these properties, but they do work in these fashions, right? So you have ones that will retain water and hold them in the soil a little bit better, and they also have ones that are penetrants that will allow water to go down through the soil, deeper into the soil, right? Or moving water through a system. So in your case, right, with sand, I would be, looking for something that, if possible, and I'll have to look and see what's labeled there. In Canada, those aren't chemicals per se. They're not pesticides, so I don't know
No.
what if they fall into that gray area. But it's also finding somebody who will carry them. But one that mixes both together, right? So you can actually buy some of these that are prepackaged that have both in there, and I think you'll see the benefits. So you want to get water deep into your soil because as it dries down, right, you want that water to be even as deeply as possible in your particular soil. Now, when you're in a clay soil, I'd be all in on the penetrant style ones, right? Because it's hard to get water to infiltrate those soils. So, yeah, I think there's a use case there on the wetting agent side. And the last thing I'll say on it is, wetting agents, even at the professional level, are a very finicky thing, meaning that, I could use, back in my golf course days, I could use a particular product at a particular rate from a wetting agent standpoint and say, man, this works awesome. You can take that same product, same rate, take it down the street, a mile or two to another golf course, and they'd use the same thing, and they'd be like, this sucks. This doesn't work. It's terrible. And nobody makes sense of it. I think so. It's very dynamic when it comes to your soil type, your watering strategies, how you do all that stuff, how you maintain your grass, how much thatch you have. Like there's a lot of different things that go into it. So if you're not happy with one, I hate to sound like a shill, and I don't get anything for this, but try a different one. Don't fall in love or fall into hate too quickly with the wetting agent.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, as I said, I don't have much experience with them, so just kind of getting into them. Good to know a little bit about how they work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's one of the biggest ones I get is about that summer stress, and I think kind of going back to what we talked about earlier too, with that 4 months out of the year
Mm-hmm.
and managing expectations. I mean, obviously, you're not gonna have that that spring lawn that you had in the spring when it was pouring rain every other day in the summer. Like it's just not going to happen. And making your expectations prepared for that and not getting down on yourself because that's the way it looks because you haven't had rain in 3 weeks and you're just getting beaten with windy, dry days. I mean, it is what it is, right? There's nothing you can really do about it.
No, and I think that's the thing is, the greatest equalizer in all, whatever, country or continent or whatever that you're in to manage turf grass is, weather is the equalizer, and how you respond to what the weather is doing, has done, or will do, really is what's going to make or break you, as a turf manager. And I say that, even in the DIY sense, all the way up to, lawn care operator, golf course superintendent, whatever you are, right? Knowing what to do or what not to do, given the weather, that again has happened, is happening, or will happen, is really the most important facet of this job. No question about it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, as we all know, the weatherman is rarely right, so that's always another fun
Yeah, that's
surprise.
it is a fun surprise, and yeah, like you got to learn to roll with it and have
Oh
multiple
yeah,
sources. Trust but verify. Trust but verify.
yeah, yeah. Um, what do we got here? So I mean, one of the other things that I get 100 emails a year about too is just people with random brown or yellow spots in their lawn. What is it? Where should I start? Freaking out. I
Hmm.
thought maybe that maybe you should just go over like your basic process if you found, a brown or yellow spot in one of your fields, what would be kind of where you would start on what's causing it, what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of things from a diagnostic or troubleshooting standpoint is, one, we're going to look at the margins of the area, right? So between where it's yellow and where it's green, right? Like what's going on right there. So, if it's a fungus situation potentially, we've got some type of disease out there. The margins will really tell a lot of the story because that's where the plants are actively getting infected, right? The spots are starting in the center and they're working out, or they're coalescing together into larger spots. So that's usually a first telltale sign if we're seeing some type of activity, lesions, things like that, right, on those leaf margins, right? The other thing too to check out is, if it's something else, right? Could we have some type of insect damage? So the next thing would be to look at, what is the condition of the roots and the shoots, right? So starting with the shoots, a little tug test, see if there's anything there. Lots of good guides, some on YouTube, and I would trust the universities most. I think there's some really good ones, especially if you're in cool season territory. Purdue has a particularly good website for entomology, right? The study of insects and how those affect turf grass. So they can talk a lot about it, on the fact sheets about ways to identify and things like that. But that's another, kind of quick diagnostic thing that we're looking at too. And then roots, a shovel, a soil probe, something like that, and just looking at, hey, what is the vigor of the roots here? Are they still white? And this, was a quick onset type situation, or is this something where, the roots are brown and we've had, a dieback potentially from the bottom up, or we, facing a top down type of situation? Because there are, pests, right, that are in the soil. So we could have, potentially insects. We could have, plant diseases that also exist there too. So that's something else that we're doing. Last thing is, we're looking for signs of what I would call foul play, right? So, hey, does this smell like gasoline? Does this smell like, somebody vomited up their lunch here and, left it yesterday, and this is stomach acid with a pH of 2. I'm saying these things because they've happened, right?
Yeah.
Did somebody put bug spray on out here, and there's a perfect foot shape right here where they had their foot covering the turf, and it's dead all around it. So things like that, where you got to do a little bit of, crime scene investigation. You have to play CSI turf detective and sort of figure out what's going on. The last thing I'll say is this: is that we all want to know what is going on. So I think the most important thing is being able to identify, or using your resources to be able to identify, and not just guessing what the problem is, right? Because that can lead you down the road of maybe doing something that makes it worse or exacerbates the situation. In a lot of cases, when we look at something, we'll, even as pros, we'll take the extra step. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to or has to do this, but using here in the United States, we've got local extension educators, right? Folks that work for university and things like that. up in your area, Guelph is a great resource, right? One of
Oh
the
yeah.
top turf colleges in North America, not just Canada, but in North America for sure. And I think there, what's funny is if you talk to, some of the bigger labs, right, in the country at universities. So, for example, North Carolina State, Purdue, are probably two of the biggest, and over 2/3 of the samples that they get every year, and they get thousands. So it's pretty good, pretty good data set that we're talking about right here. Over 2/3 of those are abiotic, meaning there's no insects, there's no disease, there's no weeds. It's just something weird happened environmentally that can't be explained, right? And there's no pests that are present that are causing that, right? So, I always take that with a grain of salt too. Is what we're looking at is a lot of times there can't be an explanation for it, but you try everything you can to get to that point, try to make the right call, and use your network. You use people that you trust, fellow lawn care operators, whomever. It's a good group of people, generally speaking. If somebody is going to be not helpful, I've not encountered too many of those people in the turf industry, at least here in the United States. Even lawn care operators that compete with each other for customers, want to help the other person do better. They know that there's enough business to go around, and keep everybody fed and keep everybody happy and stuff like that. So, networking in front of those resources, I think, is an important part of all that too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. I know. Normally, if I get an email with a picture from somebody, I mean, the first thing I normally tell them is, "Can you tell me what's above, and can you tell me what's below if you start pulling that grass back?" Right, and
There you go.
normally you can get to a pretty, decent kind of guess about what's going on. Either if it's, a walnut tree or something falling all over, or needles or everything like that, or what the heck's going on. Or,
Mm.
I remember when I worked at the golf course coming around the 18th green one day, and the superintendent's just standing there, and there's someone applied bug spray right on the 18th green, and it's just this like wavy mess going all over and yeah, I think he probably had a little stressed out drive back to the turf shed after that one, but that wasn't
Yeah,
the worst thing that happened
that's
in
yeah.
the couple years I was there. But
No, I can
it makes
imagine.
it
I can
interesting.
imagine. Yeah, it's always a challenge. When you get into situations that you've done everything that you can, but you still can't control what Mother Nature does. But the other unknown is what other people might do. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, scary.
you never know. Um, a couple of things, people always, water can be expensive, and they want to let their lawn go dormant throughout the summer. Um, is that a lot of people ask, about, is that a good idea? Is my lawn going to die? Is it not going to come back? I mean, I think me and you both know that, you can have your lawn go dormant through the summer, and we'll definitely come back
Mm-hmm.
in the fall. But do you have any maybe tips for people out there about, if you are letting your lawn go dormant, things to look out for to maybe,
Yeah,
help kind of stamp down some of the damage after, when the rain starts coming back in the fall season?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think from a big picture, long term perspective, is if you have the opportunity to renovate, again, choosing the right species for the area or the application that you're in, right? So that's number one. But going down to a more tangible level of whatever you got out there, minimizing traffic is definitely going to be a help. So if the postman walks the same route every day, if you can deter he or she somehow from doing that, or if the dog goes out to do his or her business in the same spot every day, trying to get them to move around, things like that. Kids like to play, a lot of things, or a lot of times what I see in situations like that is it's fixed things that there's a trampoline, or there's a pool, or there's a fire pit, things like that you can't move, and those areas just get the snot beat out of them. So if you have those areas, right, just try to be mindful of it if you can, but also be ready to fix it come fall. When August rolls around, it's time to kind of go ahead, and hopefully some rains are coming. But the last thing I'll say on that part is it's really the length of time, right? So tall fescue can go a good solid probably 3, almost 4 weeks with no water whatsoever, and bounce back just fine. So if you do get into those extended drought periods, which it's not it's uncommon, but it's not impractical, right? For Southern Ontario for something like that to happen, is don't be afraid to water it a little bit, just to kind of keep it alive. You don't need to go out there and mortgage, have a second mortgage to afford your water bill.
Yeah.
But you should probably try and keep it alive, or at least those areas that are stressed, right? So those areas where the dog's playing, where the fire pit is, near the trampoline, whatever. Just go out there and hand water those areas, right? Or set a sprinkler up and just try to keep the traffic ridden and wear areas watered in, and I think you'll find pretty good success.
Yeah, I know, some of my neighbors think I'm nuts in the middle of summer where everything's pretty green and I'm standing there with my arms crossed, all angry looking at it. And I know some of my neighbors think I'm nuts too when I'm watering my grass or my backyard back before I had in ground when it was all straw brown. But I mean, it
Oh,
worked, that little bit of water throughout the summer can really help hold you over when, that rain starts to come back.
no
I
question
mean,
about it, and no
even
question
if you
about
just
it.
think about like you being, if you're like dehydrated out in the desert, what's better, no water or, a little cup with, a couple drops of water in it? Obviously, the little couple drops of water is going to be better than nothing.
Yeah, and
Might not save
even
you, but it'll be better than nothing.
man, that got morbid really quickly, but yeah, that whole mindset that you're just trying to keep the crown of the plant, that growing point that is sort of in between the roots and the leaf blades or the shoots, right? um that's what we've got to keep hydrated. That's sort of the headquarters of the grass, and if we don't, then that's when we're going to have failure later on. So definitely, good thoughts on just doing some just a little bit of water, as needed as you get into those drier periods, longer duration of drier periods.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember too. I had my drone up and I showed my neighbor a picture of the subdivision beside me, and it was just all, straw brown lawns. And she goes, "Look at all those lawns. They're all dead." And I said, "Trust me, I'll show you a picture in 3 months and they'll all be, dark green." And sure enough, I pulled the picture up perfectly later, 3 months later, and they all look perfectly fine. And just because you come out one morning because it's so hot, it doesn't mean that it's gone forever and you're just going to give up and throw in the towel and walk away, right?
No, and I think the most important aspect of all that is that grass in particular, right, and turf grass more specifically, is one of the most widely adapted plants on the earth, right? It grows in all sorts of places, and from a natural standpoint, right? It's natural biology. It wants to go dormant in times of stress during the summertime, right? It's meant to do that. And so the idea of a green lawn all summer long, again, just flies in the face of what kind of expectation do you have? Are you having other people set your expectations for you, or are you setting your own and realizing, hey, I've got an irrigated lawn in Southern Ontario and it hasn't rained in 2 weeks. Yeah, this doesn't look bad,
Yeah.
versus, oh my God, what are we going to do? What's, wait, what? You got to get over here. Like, no, we're fine. Like, it just needs to rain. And
Yeah.
when you tell people that, they're like, don't you have any sense of urgency? And it's like, I mean, yeah, I want it to rain, but there's nothing that we can do right now,
Yeah.
and you take
Yeah.
a hose out there and, you know, uh, hose off the dog pee and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah, it's, that's an interesting piece there. The water piece is always something that gets people fired up for whatever reason, right? You're using too much, you're using not enough, and anything in between.
Yeah. I mean, I know, but some people get a little annoyed with you putting so much down on your grass, but I mean, in the end, I don't really do much else, so this is kind of my entire life, so might as well
Hey,
spend it there than somewhere else.
I like it. I like it.
So I guess do you really have much else that you were looking at saying or asking? Any questions you had for me maybe before we move on
Well,
to
I just
the
tell
go
no,
ahead.
just I mean, I guess what from a business standpoint, you talked about the questions you get and everything like that. I guess the couple that I had for you was, you know, uh, how do you set yourself apart, right, in a world that you can't be like, well, hey, I'm the only guy on the block that can use pesticides. I mean, it's not like that. So, help me understand, just from a country and a restriction sense, number one, and number two, you personally, like, what are you doing to differentiate and sell yourself to, a customer that has choices in the marketplace?
So like the biggest thing that I guess we're trying to do is more just, kind of go all the way back to the basics. I mean, I would say that, the people that want that like pristine lawn where they don't want to see a single weed, they can obviously go to the guy next door who has, the chemicals he brought legally across the border to spray on their lawn, and nobody will have any problem with that. But I mean, when you come to us, right, we're just there, to tell you, here's the best cultural practices. Here's the best thing that I can recommend. And in the end, a lot of people are focused on the environment now, and they like that idea, that there is no chemicals and it is green, and that there's going to be having less, environmental footprint in their lawn. But I mean, I would honestly say the biggest thing that I'm doing now is more just, encouraging people. As I said, some people are just like so discouraged that they've completely given up on ever having that green lawn. They just think it's impossible and they're never going to have it ever again. So, if we're able to encourage those people, that hey, you can come here and here's a list of things for you to do. You can take care of it yourself. Make sure you're cutting at that proper height. The amount of push mowers I see where every wheel set at a different height just boggles my mind. You grab the thing, the whole thing rocks back and forth. You're just like, what are you even thinking? Like, come on here. It says AAA. They all gonna be the same height. BBB, CCC, all that. But like maybe that's mainly I would say the biggest thing that allows us to kind of come in there and get people on. And then through social media, I mean, most of the stuff that I do now is through social media, and just trying to help as many people out as possible. I mean, I don't normally charge for a lot of just basic help, emails about stuff, and that's mainly just because I want to kind of spread it and help people out, just kind of understanding the basics, because I feel like there's a lot of myths out there, and I feel like kind of the Scott's company has kind of created like this entire 4 applications a year and never think about it again kind of idea about lawn care that's a little bit, skewed for what it actually is. So I feel like, if you can educate people about what they're doing, what is turf grass, how does it grow, what's the best way to take care of it, then maybe, people can in the end make their own more educated decisions on, what they need to do to take care of their own lawn, instead of, every time there's an issue, they got to go run to the store to ask somebody or call somebody or anything like that.
I like that. I like that approach of sort of being that trusted resource, right? That person or that company that, no matter what, like if you want us to do it for you or you want to do it together, you do some, you do some of it, they do some of it, or, you just want some guidance. I like that idea that, you're there to help. And that's, people always look at, I shouldn't say people, but there are a lot of companies out there that look at, hey, our only value that we can provide you is to show up on your lawn with a spreader or a sprayer, and that's it. And it seems like what I'm hearing, what I've seen, is that, hey, there are different ways to do this, right? And the more that the potential customer, goes in, I see it all kinds of different ways, right? I see it where people, start learning this stuff and they get to a certain point where like, all right, like I can't do this. I gotta have somebody come help me.
Yeah.
I can't, I don't trust myself enough to do this, right? Or whatever. Or you have people that gravitate towards, certain services and things like that you offer while they still do their own stuff. And I think that's sort of meeting them where they are. And I really feel like that's where consumers in general are today, right? That, you can't just have you can. I mean, there's still people out there that buy Scotts because they just want to be told what to do and they just want to sit there and lap it up without any effort or anything like that. But it sounds like those aren't your people. You're more engaged with people that are actively engaged themselves and wanting something more than what that can provide. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
I mean, in the end of the day, turf grass is a living entity, right? And I mean, you gotta, it does some, you do some, it's kind of like a relationship between you and your lawn. You're trying to keep it growing, and you can't really just kind of neglect it, because obviously if you neglect somebody in a relationship, go ask somebody how that works out.
No doubt. And I think that's an important thing too, is not getting too big, right? So that was the other question I was going to ask, is like, what, not necessarily, you don't have to share, what you guys do now, or how big you are or anything like that, but like, what is the goal? Like, I hate sounding like, like we're in a job interview or something, but where do you see the company in 5 years? Like, what's the goal? Like, and how, let me ask it this way, right? If we're sitting here on this podcast 5 years from today, right? We're recording this podcast. It's December of 2022. If we're in 2027 in December, and we look back 5 years down the road and said, man, it's been a really successful 5 years. We've accomplished or done X, Y, and Z. What are those things? What's that look like to you?
First of all, I think it would be weird. Be 2027. I would feel old by the time we made it out
Well,
there.
we'd all be older, as a matter of fact,
yeah.
Wade. So I mean, if you're much older and you've ripped a hole in the time space continuum, then I think lawn care is probably a little beneath your pay grade. But okay, I hear you.
But like, I mean, right now it's just me, and I worked at a lawn care company like throughout high school in the summers, right? Just cutting grass, doing fertilizer, spraying chems and stuff like that. And then I did a year and a bit at a golf course, and just kind of wasn't into the 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. kind of work. Wasn't my style. So I am a full-time carpenter at this point. I'm working on building stuff, framing houses, building decks, all that stuff. But I mean, my goal for Great Creek North would, to have, and I'm trying to kind of get out of the, cutting grass and slinging fert kind of, lifestyle. It's not really what I want Great Creek North to be. I mean, my goal would be, to have a bigger social media presence, where we can kind of educate homeowners. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I think there's a lot, as I said before, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think if we can get, the correct information into the correct hands, then, maybe we can kind of spread, get rid of some of the, negativity in the lawn care, about lawn care and about lawns in general, and about, and, in the end, some of these fertilizer and chem bans came from misuse, right? It's because homeowners, some homeowners didn't understand how they worked, and they were throwing down, fertilizer, well, and then next 10 minutes 15 millimeters of rain came down in an hour and washed it all into sewers, and that was that.
I should be
But I
laughing,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, so if we can help educate homeowners, maybe we can get some of these things kind of running more, less waste, producing things better. And if we can kind of make more of a community, right, where everybody's helping each other out, and everybody's knowing what's going on. And if Great Creek North can kind of be a part of that and help educate people and get people more aware of what's going on with turf grass, especially in Canada. I mean, that was really what got me into it. Like, I mean, I'd always kind of been into lawn care stuff for a really long time, and I'd been really nerdy in my backyard going around and doing stripes and all that stuff. But what really got me into it was that I saw, there was this kind of void in the Canadian market where there was all these American guys out there, Alan Hain and all those guys, and they all had their product lines, right, that they were pumping out, buy this, buy that, put this down, then put this down, then. And you're sitting here watching as a Canadian, and you're going like, what if I can't? Like, what do I do now? So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's where I really latched on to you and Ryan Knorr and your podcast too. And I thought that you guys did a great job at explaining, back down to basics and cultural practices and taking care of your lawn, and, maybe trying to do preventative things so you don't have to put down that, pesticide application or whatever, because you made it to that point where you let those things kind of take over. And if you can kind of, stay on top of things and look after things, and maybe you can keep those other issues under control, and then you don't have to end up, getting to a point where, you're throwing down, 4 fungicide applications a year or whatever, because you're watering at night every day, and your lawn's always sitting wet, and you're watering for like 4 hours at dusk when the humidity's like through the roof, stuff like
Yep.
that kind of.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like, educating people, it's always tough, right? Because they've got to read into and buy into, what you're putting out there. And you hear the old marketing adage, somebody's got to hear something 7 times before they'll accept it or really listen to it. And I think that's where these concepts are things that, from a content standpoint, these concepts can be worked in over and over again, because they are sort of global to lawn care. Watering doesn't matter, where you're at. If you're in, South America or South Africa or Southern Ontario, if you don't water your turf correctly, you're going to have problems. Like, that is a global
Yeah.
issue with turf grass, right? So let's talk about that, right? And getting the basics right. And I think you're right that too often in YouTube lawn care and in other media outlets, right? It's, I have this problem, so I need to apply this product to fix it. And what I'm hearing from you is that, I mean, yeah, you could, or in some cases, like where you're at, no, you can't. And here's what you can do, though, right? So, always giving people another option on how to do it. And I think you'll find, I mean, at least in my experience and what I see of those around me, is that, if you continue to put that content out there, that people will gravitate towards that. People will, come and ask and say, hey, we need Great Green Northern to help us do this, right? And it's gonna either get done by you guys, or it's not going to get done at all, because I don't trust myself as a consumer, to follow this. And I think that's where, yeah, maybe might only change a little bit of the world, but it's the part that you live in. It's the part that's most important to you. So
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, Canadians are nice, so no one's yelling at me yet. We're a little passive aggressive, but you know.
No, they yell down here. We're definitely yellers and screamers for the most part down here. I take that. I take that with a grain of salt. But no,
Yeah.
I hope to see that. I hope to see, more of the content coming out. And I appreciate all the kind words, with respect to what Ryan and I do. It's a lot like this this particular podcast where, we roll in here, no script, and we just kind of talk. And the folks that I'm fortunate enough to do podcasts with are all people that I don't agree with everything that they say, and it's important for me to participate with people like that. But also, they're on my wavelength. They want the same things. They just want to do it a different way. And my life experience has taught me that making yourself feel uncomfortable, or putting yourself in those situations where you have people that disagree with and argue with, and pushes you to do better and find better ways and challenge your thoughts and everything like that. And so I think you'll do that too. I think with your content and what you've already put out, what you continue to put out, if you stay on that track, you're going to challenge what people think about the Scott's program or about whatever it is, right? And that'll get people thinking. And again, you when you sit down and identify who your ideal client is, it's not somebody who is steadfast and will die on the hill that Scott's forever or nothing. You guys are all wrong. Like those aren't your people. Your people are the people that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing and I need help, or hey, I think the Scott's thing might be bullshit, man. Like what
Yeah.
what are we doing here?
Well,
And
I mean,
that's yeah.
I've been there. I've done the Scott stuff, and I can tell you from experience that this is what I'm doing right now is miles better than I would have never gotten here if I stick on the Scott's program. And the Scott's program, it got me 20%, 30%. It got me over that initial hump, but it never would have got me to this point.
And I think that goes back to what I said earlier about the expectations thing. It's almost like you have these like levels, that you graduate towards in your in the products that you use or don't use, or the beliefs that you have, and the way that you are able to work yourself through problems, right? You add more layers, you add more complexity for sure, right? But that also leads you to more situations, right? Whether it be weather, irrigation, sunlight, trees, like all the things that could hamper turf, right, or make it better.
Yeah.
I think as you add those layers of complexity, you have the opportunity to be successful in more of those situations on a more consistent basis, right? Scott's gives you a window that is maybe a skinny person, not like myself, might be able to wiggle through, but I like a window that I'm not a small individual. I'd like to a window I can comfortably climb through, and that's going to require a level of complexity when it comes to lawn care that you got to add some stuff. You got to have some stuff in the arsenal, whether it be cultural practices, products, equipment, all those types of things. And that's the name of the game, is making it easy on yourself to the extent possible you can to be successful.
Yeah. Well, and I always say too, it's really easy to take, a lawn that has 30% grass and make it a lawn that has 80% grass in one season.
Yep.
You can easily do that. It's
Yep.
holding it at that, 80% for the next, 5 years. And then it's getting it from that 80 to that, 90, 95. That's where the real work comes in, right? And that's when you got to start looking at, getting off that, Scott's program and finding other ways to make a change, because when you get to those small, minute changes, the littlest thing makes a big difference when you start getting to that point.
1,000%, 1,000%. And, to take it into the world that I deal with, I'll give you an example of, you go to a client's place that has a field that's just, awful, right? Sports field. And, you renovate it, you do what you need to do, and whatever that looks like, sod, seed, whatever the case. But inevitably what ends up happening is, you stand on that field the first year after, and they're just like amazed. They're like, I can't believe we went from what we had before to what we have now. Like, this is an HGTV like transformation. It's amazing, right? And they're awestruck. And then in year 2, we start down the road of, hey, it seems like it might be a little uneven over here. Do you think there's something? Oh yeah, we probably just need to top dress that area a little bit more because the traffic from the teams or whatever, blah blah blah. And then it turns into, hey, there in the third year, you're like, there's a spot, right by the 6-yard box on the north end of the field where the goalie will kind of like walk up to to kick the ball down to midfield. That it's just not right. Can we look at that spot? And that's what I'm saying about expectations, right? Like, the more you can zero in and the more that you can target those specific areas and realize that, I don't care if you have a 500 square foot lawn, a 5,000 square foot, 50,000 square foot, whatever it is, right? A lawn, it ain't all the same, right? You can do your damnedest and try and treat it all the same, but there are spots which you will have to zero in and treat specially, right, to get everything to be, homogeneous and beautiful and whatever else you need it to be. So, yeah, I like that idea that, the dial, so to speak, gets turned up, little by little. And I think it's important to walk, a customer or a client through that journey. Hey, here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. Right. And I'll tell those folks, in year 1 and year 2, listen, I'm glad you're awestruck in year 1, but you're going to be yelling at me and complaining. Yelling is a relative term, but you're going to be, constructively criticizing me, a year from now about, oh no, we're just so happy it's like this. I'm just saying, you watch, you see, and it happens, and I bring it back to light. Hey, you remember a year ago when you said, and it's not throwing it back in their face. It's just to say, hey, your expectations are going up, and that is good. That is a good thing. So, you got to bring that to light. I think it's important for people to realize that on their journey and make them feel like they're not like, inferior because they thought, well, I used to believe this. Like, we talk to people all the time, on our other podcasts, like, oh, I can't believe like what you're saying, sort of, I can't believe I believed in Scott's. It's like, no, like that's a thing and it can work, but it's just not going to meet your expectations. Don't be mad about that. Just, you've gotten better. You've leveled up and you're in a different spot right now, so it is what it is.
My neighbor has a lawn care company and they come and do, weed and feed, 3-4 times a year. And then she has a guy cut it and they cut it, 3.5 inches, and it looks pretty decent in the spring and the fall. They put some pretty nice stripes into it and it looks okay. And then in the summer it can get pretty toasty. But other than that, I mean, it's perfect for her. She doesn't do anything else with it. And to her, that's her 100%. Looks awesome. I'm good with it. But to me, I stare at it and it gives me chills up my spine sometimes. But I mean, it is what it is.
Gosh, that's funny. Yeah. And, you that's the hard part, right? Is that restraining yourself from, trying to, how do I say this, without being pushy, telling people that, hey, there is a better way. And it's hard to thread that needle sometimes, whether it's with a prospective client, it's with a neighbor, it's a friend, somebody you see at the bar or restaurant, whatever, right? It's hard to thread that needle. And so I think that's where it's more important than, fighting. And again, fighting is too strong of a word, but, advocating on that level, it's a lot easier just to advocate and say, hey, here's how we do it, right? Rather than say, this guy's wrong, or here's where you could be doing so much better. You say, hey, this is what we do. And people,
Yeah.
like I said, the people that are into it will realize, oh, hey, that's not at all like what I do right now. That's different. And I like the way that, his stuff looks. Let's talk to him and figure this out. Right. So I think you're on the right track. I'm proud to see what you guys have done so far. It's been cool to watch and cool to catch up on the channel here. I haven't had a chance to watch in a while, unfortunately, and because I've been busy, but I've caught up here the last several days and drive around the car and pop a video on. And yes, I've kept my eyes attentive. Don't worry, but it's cool to see. So keep doing what you're doing, and don't let up. Just you have a good network, you have a good group of people that you can reach out to, and continue that leveling up process, and resetting your own expectations so that you can reset them for your clients.
Sweet, awesome. I appreciate all the praise.
Yeah. So what's the big question? You teased me here and said that there's a big one here. There's one at the end that's
normally at the end of the show we like to do successes and failures. So this is like the segment where we talk about, one time we did a really great thing in the lawn, it worked perfectly and everything went as planned. And then another time we said, oh, this is going to be great. And we went out and we did it. And then 3 days later, we were just looking at the lawn that we just burned half of it and we're shaking our head and banging our head against the wall. It doesn't have to be that bad, but the biggest thing is, as I was talking about with that kind of, attitude and discouragement problem, I think it's kind of important. On social media, there's a lot of, you only show the good stuff and not the bad. So I think it is a little important, to show people that, even people, kind of amateurs like me and professionals like you that are, doing stuff, it goes wrong every once in a while. And well, sometimes more than every once in a while. And I think it's good to, let the people out there know that, that it does happen to us too. So I didn't know if you had a specific story in mind of something that maybe didn't go as planned from this year or from last year or from years past that you wanted to share with the folks out there.
I mean, I'll say, it's funny this year, the negative and the positive are the same project, which is not typical. But this year I talked a little bit about the first part of it on the podcast with Ryan Knorr, where we had a project that was all ready to go, ready to grass, like brand new root zone material, like brand new it's a sand-based field, drainage the works. I mean, this field was all in probably near 450,000 US dollars. I mean, it was big time field. And the day before we were supposed to get grass on it, we were sprigging it with Bermuda grass. So you need a lot of water, like, almost as probably a little bit more than sod even to keep this stuff alive. Big storm goes through. I think you guys actually had some really bad storms around that same time too, knocked out a bunch
around
of
the end
power
of May
and everything
then.
like that. Yep. As the first
Yeah.
2 weeks of June. And we lost power. We had no power to our pumps, for irrigation purposes and all that kind of stuff. And the guys are showing up. So we've got, a sod, or the sprigs are coming from the eastern shore of Maryland, so a 9-hour drive. And our sprig crew is coming from the central part of the country in Missouri. And they're all meeting up right here, kind of the midpoint, which is here in Columbus. So, we had no choice but to go forward with it and scrape together a generator and called electricians and got favors done and got everything hooked up and ran it manually, not as much as we wanted to. And so those things struggled, that field struggled for the first 6-7 weeks of its life, and unfortunately it just wasn't there when they were ready to host their first game. And so we had to have, we didn't, we were honest the entire time, but still never a conversation we want to have like, hey, your first game that you're supposed to have out here and the community is here to celebrate and it's a big deal and everything like that. Well, it's not going to happen. We got to push it back. And so it was a lot of fighting and scratching and clawing. We did a lot of different things. We did some crazy stuff. I mean, we put growth blankets on that field in the middle of summertime for a week, to cover it like stuff we would do in the wintertime. We did it in the middle of summertime just to kind of create a greenhouse effect and get that stuff growing like crazy. And it did a really good job. It definitely, fast forwarded things, but it still wasn't there. So that was the tough part. The first, 9 weeks of that project were just awful. We had awful weather to start. We got it done and then we're ready to grass. We lose power, all that kind of stuff. So the flip side of this, though, is that, we had those extra couple of weeks to get it growing in, and it made a huge difference. We got a little mini heat wave right before, and that's what we really needed to kind of get the stuff to fill in. Everything worked out great on that side of it. Have the first game, and people are just over the moon for it. And the cool part about it was because we had done all the right things, and so been in a sticky situation and just continued. Okay, hey, today, what can we do to make this better? It's a terrible situation. It's this, it's that, right? We've got all the the cards are down, the chips are down, whatever. And what can we do today? Stacking those days up got us to the point where we have the first game and it looks great, but it just kept getting better and better, right? The quality of the turf, right? The durability of it, all those things just continued to get better through the season. And I attribute that to not getting too down in the dumps about negative stuff that happened, right? And it was bad. I mean, you still had still delayed a game or still had to move a game to their opponent's site and things like that, which is never good. But because we were persistent and we were focused on again that day and what we needed to do, that made a huge difference for us. So, and if that had happened, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, for me, I'm not sure that the outcome would have been the same. I think I would have got flustered, pissed. You start questioning decisions, all that kind of stuff, and that calmness and that confidence that comes from okay, hey, put yourself in uncomfortable conversations and comfortable situations, right? And you work your way out of them. It's when that really happens, right? And your back's against the wall, it shows who you are and what you do. And so we didn't win the war. We didn't cure cancer. We didn't do anything. We just grew grass on a high school football and soccer field, in Ohio. But you still have a whole community of several thousand people that are counting on you, and they want to come out there and see their kids, grandkids, nephews, brothers, cousins, whatever, play ball on it. And when they can't, that's a problem. But they when they did come out and finally see it, that was like they couldn't believe. Again, it was like that HGTV moment, that big reveal, and they were over the moon for it. So proud of that, and proud that in short order we were able to make our number one negative into our number one positive for 2022. So
yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. And did the team win in the end? On the field?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
yeah,
they actually had their best season in like 30 years. So I'll go ahead. We'll take a little bit of that credit. Hey,
yeah.
But no, seriously, they did it all. We that we had nothing to do with that. But all things considered, I think this the lesson there is just a mindset thing. It's easy to get pissed off, if you're a lawn care operator and, customer calls and complains. It's easy if you're a homeowner and you're taking care of your own lawn and something doesn't go according to plan, or you just spend all this money on a particular, treatment or a product, or, this time on doing something and it doesn't work out. And I can tell you that as the professional who's done this over and over and over again, is you have to get used to it, because, seldom do you get everything that you want, and seldom do you get everything that you plan for to be the result. And that is the true measure of a good turfgrass manager, whether you're a pro or an amateur or anything in between, is how you deal with failure, how you deal with the potential of failure of, okay, hey, something could go bad here. If that happens, what are we going to do, right? And that's the measure of a true turfgrass manager, a true grass grower. So I'm not sitting here saying I'm the best at it at all. But I love the opportunity, relish in the chances that I get to continue to get better. And I like watching other people go through it too and trying to help them along and seeing their journey. So that's why I was so excited to come on here and talk to you tonight and hear more about what you're doing and hear how the business is growing and everything like that. I think you're doing the carpentry thing now, but I could see that fork in the road moment coming someday for you, Wade. You never know. You never know.
You never know. Maybe I'll get tired of building decks.
Hey,
who knows?
There's it's something to fall back on. You got something to fall back on. Never gonna take the trades out of your bones, but the grass is there and needs to grow. So, and we need you to grow it. So, but yeah, no, this has been super fun. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing more guests. I think I'm the first one back, or one of the first ones back here. Yeah. So let's get it going, man. Let's hey, you should just keep pushing these out, and I think you'll have a good winter. Still talking about turf while you look out the window of the basement and see snow on the ground.
Yeah, hopefully the snow doesn't get too high that I can't see out the window.
No,
that's the biggest worry out there.
That's a problem. That's when Great Green North needs to add snow removal to its list of services, right? At least for the house.
Either that, or I just get on a plane, fly down, somewhere a little south for a couple months, just pretend like it doesn't exist.
No, that's
come back up and when it's all gone.
See, you got plans. You have ways. You're admitting that snow would be a failure, and you're looking at ways actively right now to get yourself out of failure. So I like it. You already in the right mindset.
Exactly. So. I'm bound and determined to see St. Augustine grass. I just want to see it. To me, it looks like some sort of alien plant. I refuse to believe it's true until I see it in person.
It's somewhere between cool season grass and a corn plant. That's about the best
I would probably say. I think that's pretty good explanation.
It's it's interesting, but do a little turf tourism this winter and go see some stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see otherwise. I think it'd be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think my girlfriend might give me shit though if I fly to a country just to see the grass. She'd probably think that's a little.
No, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Just do it. You can ask for forgiveness later. It's fine. So, but anyway, well, thanks, man. Again, I appreciate it, and I can't wait to come back on here next year, and we'll jam on the same things. Okay.
Yeah. And you want to tell everybody else where they can find you on anything else here if they're looking for you?
Yeah. So other casts I do. So if you check out Matt Martin on the Grass Factor on YouTube, I do a couple of shows with him. One's sort of an interview call-in type of thing called Thirsty Thursday. That's every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then we also do a podcast called Burn and Return, where we kind of go through all the latest news and things like that in the ag and turf market and kind of keep people up to date, give a little bit of our takes on things and what we're seeing, and disagree on a lot of stuff and have good conversation. And then finally, obviously, Ryan Knorr. So Ryan is in the middle of moving and getting all set up in his new world headquarters. So we're giving Ryan a little bit of grace while he gets his new studio all set up. And we'll be back to casting here probably sometime early after the first part of the year. He'll be all set up and ready to go. So looking forward to that
podcast from the. You're not gonna do one from the trailer that's sitting in his garage.
Maybe.
Maybe
we're trying to figure out internet connections and all that other stuff. There's we need like a satellite uplink. So I think he's got to sell a few more bags of seed, and I got to build a few more fields before we can get into that realm. But we'll get it done. We'll get it done here soon. And I love talking with RK. We're kind of like a little bit of the odd couple. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert to a certain extent, and but we both love turf grass. So good times.
All right, thank you again for coming on, and hopefully the people listening here learned something. I think we talked about a pretty decent amount of stuff. So thank you all for listening, and make sure to check back for the next Great Green North podcast. The Great Green North podcast is hosted by Wade Murray. You can find us on YouTube at Great Green North Lawn Care. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe on iTunes and Spotify, and rate us 5 stars for more episodes of the Great Green North podcast. As always, thank you guys for listening. Share it with your friends and family, and we will see you guys in the next one.